Whimpering Wastes, the new endgame mode in 2.1. It's essentially a horde mode where many enemies spawn wave after wave. Of course, your goal is to clear these waves fast enough to get a good score and before the timer hits 0. There's also these tokens that can buff your damage. That's basically what this mode is all about. Now, let's discuss. Is this mode good or is it a whimpering waste? You like what I did there? Initially, I did like it. A new thing to do in the game, sure. I do it, and I like doing it the first time. You know, a quick honeymoon phase, right? But after that, and a couple of days to digest many opinions and thoughts about this game mode, Whimpering Wastes is leaning more towards not being so good. And I agree. The mode has many problems and needs work. So, in this video, I'm going to discuss those problems and propose some potential solutions. I want this video to be an open discussion, so please share your thoughts as well. Anyway, let's first start with the enemies. Now, this is a major problem I have. There are no bosses, but instead you have large groups of common mobs and elite mobs. Now, the problem here is that since these mobs are in such large groups per wave, you need AoE. But even with AoE, these enemies seem to just not give a shit about you. The smaller ones get flopped around like a damn hacky sack and spread apart with many abilities, including echo skills, which can suck a lot. I had situations where I didn't even want to use my Bellborn skill or the Impermanence Heron Bird just because they would end up spreading the enemies too far apart. I had some other situations where the enemies literally decided to walk away from me like the little bitch maid they are. Another one where bears just spread apart and stood up, did nothing for a long period of time. Dude, I think it was like 5-10 seconds, I swear. So you can easily see the problem here. Too many enemies to deal with that aren't coded aggressive enough to come to you. A very massive hassle to deal with. Kuro needs to either make them aggressive or change it up. When it comes to the group of elite mobs, they are a lot better than the common ones. There's only 3 of them at a time, and they are aggressive enough to come to you, other than the bears, of course. The bears are a bit of a mixed bag for me. But if they replace the common ones with the elite ones, I think that's a good start. Or, again, if they just make the little dudes more aggressive instead of little bitches. Now let's move on to the next problem. I've already mentioned it, AoE. Aside from the enemies still being hard to group with AoE, the mode is a lot easier with it. So this, of course, poses a huge problem for many players. You don't have Gion, Camellia, Rochia, Chongli? Well, have fun. You're not doing shit in this game mode. So if you don't have those characters, or a good AoE character in general, this mode results in being a character check. Maybe you could say that for Tower of Adversity and Holograms, but no. Look at the Danjin players that solo those modes. No problem. They are still doable without the need of AoE. But for Whimpering Wastes, it will literally be so hard for those who don't have AoE characters. So this will of course push players to either spend money or use their free-to-play pulls just for an AoE character. This can be a negative, especially for people who are trying to save for other characters they want, or they just don't like the said AoE character in the first place. So how do we solve this? Well, I mentioned the tokens at the beginning of the video. These, of course, can buff your damage, but there isn't one to really help with AoE that good. Sure, there is the one that recovers 3% of HP per second and deals 600% electro damage to nearby enemies upon the 6th recovery, but what if you just don't take damage to heal? What do you do then? Maybe this token can work, but not as good. What if instead we make a token that actually helps to suck the enemies, to group them? I think that would certainly be a start. Now that's another problem. Let's move on to the next one. The challenge? What about it? Well, in terms of survivability, there is none. With the common mobs being bitches and not aggressive, you are not going to be taking damage. Even with the elite mobs, they can certainly add a little bit of stakes here and there, but still, you aren't really in danger. Wuthering Waves is crafted to be a reactive and rotational type of game. Now, the only thing that this mode has is rotational. There is no reaction. You're not reacting to anything. You're just swapping characters and doing AoE, and occasionally trying to run after a little bitch that runs away from the entire group. But overall, the only challenge is the timer and the character check. We already know the problem with the character check, but let's discuss the timer more. Now honestly, I do think the timer can be hit or miss for us players. Some people may like the idea of having the timer so they can see how high they can score before it hits 0. I can understand that. But for some others, they may not like it because the timer is the only challenge. So it won't be all that fun in the long run. Personally speaking, I'm on that side. So how do we fix this? We add more aggression, more elite enemies, and even perhaps bosses, since there is none. Pushing another idea here, how about instead of the timer existing only just for how long you have until the stage ends, how about it's there for a rage mechanic, like what we've seen in the boss stages of the Elusive Realm? Because once that timer hits 0, the boss does more damage. It's much more dangerous. So with that, the enemies in this mode could also become much more dangerous. This idea would be especially good for the Infinite Torrent stage, which of course has infinite waves. Moving on to the next problem, the tokens. Now this honestly isn't such a huge deal like the others, but I do think the tokens do lack creativity. Most of them just increase your damage and that's it. We don't have anything super creative that can be super fun like the buffs you see in Elusive Realm or anything that really helps with the AoE. How do we fix this? Obviously just by making more creative ones. Elusive Realm is perfect. It has a lot of examples that Kuro could reference from. Moving on to the last problem. Whimpering Wastes took over the reset of Tower of Adversity. So, Tower of Adversity won't reset until 2 weeks later at the making of this video. This poses the problem of people not being able to get endgame rewards because they simply aren't prepared for Whimpering Wastes being in the cycle while Tower of Adversity is outside the cycle and it won't reset yet. Now, how do we solve this? A couple of options on my mind. One, we make these two endgame modes run together and reset together. I don't see why they shouldn't be able to do that. Now, the second option they could do is essentially just the first one, but we combine the rewards together so that in the end, the players can choose which endgame they want to do and still get the same rewards without missing out on any. I think that's a pretty good idea there. Overall, this mode really does need work. Like I said at the beginning, I liked it at first, but over time I saw and heard a lot of other thoughts, so I think a lot of us can agree that this does need to be improved a lot. Between this and Tower of Adversity, I much prefer Tower of Adversity because it has a bit more of a challenge in my opinion. Now, the mode isn't completely bad. I do think the best thing of this is that it makes AoE characters much more relevant. Rochia, Jian, shoot, Yang Yang, and Jianshin especially. I think that's a good thing. And I also really like the UI design, but that's about it. Again, guys, I want this video to be an open discussion, so share any thoughts you have down below in the comments. Also, remember to share your feedback in surveys so that Kuro knows for sure how we feel. Now that's enough yapping for me. As always, thank you all for coming and watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.